So Microsoft has made all the features available for the on-prem as well as the SaaS version of Business Central. We have an incredible number of ISVs that are available. So sort of the question of is Business Central really ready or not is off the table at this point. It absolutely is. But one of the main benefits here that I think is important is SaaS, so software as a service. So there's a lot of services that we can get. So you can get platform as a service, and there's just different options sort of when you think about moving to quote unquote the cloud. But Business Central truly is an offering of software as a service. Now that's true when you're deploying in the cloud using Microsoft Cloud. So, benefits of SaaS, if you really don't understand that whole package offering, couple of highlights there. Data security is one of them. So deploying in the cloud, Microsoft maintains all of the security compliance. So you're not really going to have to worry about data breaches and that sort of thing from a database server perspective. Microsoft takes care of that for you. I think another advantage of software as a service in the cloud is stability. So you again got Microsoft's data centers behind you. You've got these data centers across multiple time zones, across multiple continents even. So Microsoft is going to keep that system stable. You look at uptime, you look at all that sort of stuff. Stability is going to be a major advantage of SaaS. Another advantage really is limited internal hardware costs and maintenance. So if you think about total cost of ownership on an on-prem system, you certainly are going to have one or more servers in your environment. You've got client-based requirements. When you talk about downloading a Windows application onto your local desktop, you're going to have environmental hardware costs there. You're certainly going to have maintenance costs. And I think one thing that sometimes doesn't get considered in the total cost of ownership is that server OS, that server database needs to be maintained. So in terms of applying patches and upgrades, in terms of database backups, in terms of applying patches, certainly one of the things is, upgrades that have to be done. When you go to a SaaS product, you don't have to worry about that. Microsoft takes care of all of that. Another issue with software as a service, I think, is a benefit is scalability. So we work with some clients, where you're constantly sort of tweaking memory, or do we go into a multi-server environment to help, help distribute processes, that sort of thing. With a SaaS option, you've got Microsoft maintaining the environment for you. So they're watching things. If you start to have performance issues or things start to slow down, they can adjust resources on the back end for you, and you just don't have to worry about that. Question we get a lot, do I have to go to the SaaS option with Business Central? No, you don't. There is an on-prem version of Business Central. So when we talk about, two paths to get you to Business Central, one of the questions we really have to ask and you have to think about is, do you want to do a true SaaS solution or do you want an on-prem solution? So, and even an on-prem solution, there's hybrids of that we can work through with you, depending again on what your goals are. All right. Point number 2 on the benefits of Business Central is cost. So Business Central is licensed per month per user. What I really like about that is you've got a budget number that you can work with. Again, if your user counts are going to go up or down, you probably plan for those ahead of time. But by and large, what you're going to be paying for this software, for the next year. When you think about an on-prem solution where you have to do maintenance and patches and all that sort of stuff, you've got a lot of unknown costs that can be in the mix. So going with a SaaS solution really helps eliminate those unknown costs. You're not going to have unknown hardware purchases. You're not going to have unplanned maintenance. The system is always in the current version. So again, think about applying patches or upgrades to the system. Most of the clients that I work with, maybe that's an annual thing. Most of them, if they're honest with themselves, are probably an 18-month to 24-month cycle for those types of upgrades. Just don't have to worry about that with a SaaS product. You're always going to be on the current version. Microsoft's going to maintain it for you. Get a lot of questions in terms of how that upgrade process works. Microsoft does provide the option for clients to set up multiple sandbox environments, and Microsoft details it pretty well if you go out and search, or we can provide documentation for you in terms of how does that upgrade work, what does that process look like, do I have heads up on it? Yeah, that's all detailed out with Microsoft, and we can work with you on that. We've been through several upgrade cycles now with our clients that we've deployed, so we certainly have firsthand experience in terms of how that's working for them. Cost as it deals with extensions. So in your, if you're currently running a nav system, modifications were really done to source code. So that was a development environment called Seaside. So those modifications actually modified the source code of the product to make table modifications, custom pages, or page modifications, etc. What happens during an upgrade process, though, is that those modifications really need to be reassessed as it applies to upgraded objects from Microsoft. So the upgrade process, could be more complicated or less complicated depending on the number and the level of customizations that someone had in the system. With Business Central now, and this is true even on the on-prem product, we're dealing with extensions, which is a new way of creating modifications to the system. So we still have the ability to add columns and pages and new tables and create code units and all that sort of stuff. It's just done with a different model, development model than what we had previously with Seaside customizations. The positive to the extension model is that it makes upgrades much cleaner. So again, the old model, what we had is the source code for those objects was being modified with a code change. In the extension model, that's not true. The underlying source code is maintained and then the extension sits outside of that. So when we think about upgrades that happen automatically in a SaaS solution in the cloud, because the extension code sits outside of that, you're preserving that code and you're making the source code upgradable without having to deal with the two sets of code that potentially could interfere with each other. Just a note on upgrades, if you're using an on-prem deployment of Business Central, you have to manage your own upgrade process. So Microsoft isn't going to manage that one. It's only a SaaS option that would do that. All right, third benefit here that I've outlined for benefits of Business Central is an updated user interface. So we're using a web unified interface for the client access. The nice thing about that is it's somewhat, or actually it's fairly browser independent. So i.e. Edge, Firefox, Chrome, the users can deal with their own browser selection. Obviously, if you have a policy internally, you could maintain that, but users are really free to use whatever browser their preference is. We also support Safari. So if you have Mac users in your environment, you don't have to do Windows emulation mode and do all that sort of I don't know, hocus pocus to make that work. I think it's really frustrating. You can go directly with Mac users to Safari Connect to Business Central. One caveat on that is some of the Office add-ins, because they load a local copy of the Office product, Office is different on a Mac than on a PC. So just some caveats on that. Again, just dealing with the Office integrations. Business Central out of the box, not a problem on Safari. Worked with 2 clients whose primary user base all was Mac-based. Along with that upgraded or updated user interface is really apps that are available through the App Store. And I checked earlier in the week when I was putting the final touches on this presentation, and there are over 700 apps that are now available through the App Store to add on to Business Central. So, they could be anything from language packs to additional functionality. Some of them are free, some of them are one-time purchase, some of them have a per user cost. It really runs the gamut. But again, apps are available then to download and deploy in your system. So if you think about an updated user interface, the process of getting third-party products is greatly simplified with Business Central. All right, customizations, extensions, personalizations, all that's available with the web interface. So in the ability for the end users to move fields around, take fields off, change fast tabs, change fact boxes, change menus, all available to you just like you had in the traditional Windows client environment, all available on the unified interface via the web. Views, you can change the columns that show up in your list, you can do the advanced filtering, you can save the views, all that functionality exists with the web client. So fully functional web client available in Business Central. If you looked at some of the early versions of Business Central, there were some limitations to that. That's just not the case anymore. There all of those customizations, personalization options that you had on the Windows client are available in the browser. All right, improved Office integration. So Office integration points with Outlook. So I have the ability to view vendor or customer account information within Outlook. I've got the ability to look up via hyperlinks within the body of the email to documents that were in my Business Central environment. So a lot of really interesting integration points with Outlook that have been added into the product at the Business Central level, and the ability to create transactions, which is I think kind of a cool integration point. We also have updated integration points with Excel. So we have some reports that export directly to Excel. You're probably familiar with those in the on-prem nav version, but we do have an edit in Excel option, which allows you a two-way integration to edit data in Excel to Business Central. Key thing about the architecture of this, which I think is important, is Nav early on developed the three-tiered architecture of the product. So you have this Nav service tier. That translates into Business Central. So Business Central has that same underlying architecture. What that means is I have all of my business logic, my customization, and the business rules at that service tier level. So when I use Excel, and I use the Edit in Excel feature, it's acting as a client to Business Central, just like a browser would. So lots of options there in terms of how that would integrate. And then Word templates are fully deployed for reports. I always do a caveat on this one. I would not use Word templates for an aging or something like that. Use Word templates for those documents that are going to be output of the system, like purchase order, sales invoices. That's really the intention of a Word, the Word templates. All right, improved platform integration. This is a big deal, especially if you've got limited internal IT resources. So using a SaaS deployment of the product, you've got the APIs, SOAP connections, and OData connections out of the box. Microsoft sets that up within your tenant. You've got the ability to create additional SOAP and OData connections if you want to, and I can manage all that right through the user interface. Using an extension, I can create and modify the APIs that come out of the box. Really important here is that those endpoints are editable through the UI in Business Central SaaS, and I don't have to deal with the security, the connections, all that stuff that can come with managing those types of connections with an on-prem solution. Now, if you've got IT resources that can do that, or you already do that, probably not a big deal. But if it's additional functionality that you're looking for and don't really want to manage it, the SaaS solution manages it for you. All right, artificial intelligence. I think this is some really cool stuff. So Microsoft has spent the last 10, 11, 12 years really building out an artificial intelligence infrastructure into Azure. And what they're doing is they're making that functionality a part of Business Central. So 3 things that are currently available with Business Central: late payment prediction on sales, AR sales transactions. So if you think about a sales invoice, not due yet, but I want to know what's the likelihood that the customer is going to pay this transaction late. Think about the proactive work you can do ahead of time on collections. So instead of waiting till the thing is 60 days, 90 days past due, I'm actually making proactive decisions ahead of time. There's additional functionality with cash flow forecasting using AI technology, and then inventory. All right, benefits of Business Central, future upgrades. Again, with a nav deployment on-prem, when you're dealing with customizations and ISVs, those are really source code modifications in the application. With the new extension model in Business Central, once you get your system there, and this is true for on-prem or SaaS, future upgrades are going to be much easier than what you've dealt with in the past. So I encourage people, get to the Business Central platform as soon as you can, and that's just going to save you time.